watching Beyond Markets. Welcome. I am Christy Cole. On the show today, we explore strategies for closing Nigeria's metering gap. We'll also talk Dubai's plans for Africa and the Made for Africa trade. As always, you can join the conversations with the hashtag Beyond Markets and follow my Twitter handle. I am at Christy Cole P. Dallas Peavey, Group Chief Operating Officer for Armese Power Solutions, says the meter asset providers are the go-between between the distribution companies and the customers in Nigeria. In this interview, he discusses the challenges in bridging the metering gap in Nigeria's power sector, as well as plans to adopt smart meters.
We've come a long way in 6 years. We have a long way to go. The problem has been the flip-flop in the regulatory side. You know, we have a huge investment, both financially and personally. We have stakes in the distribution chain, the generation chain. We do the metering. We have the metering companies. We have the largest metering manufacturing facility in Africa. So we've come a long way. We've made a huge investment, but we're certainly not happy where we're at this point.
Now, with your interests, like you highlighted earlier, in the DISCOs, the GENCOs, and the metering asset providing area of Nigeria's power sector, so much has been said about the GENCOs and the DISCOs. DISCOs particularly being seen as the bad boys as far as Nigeria's power delivery system is concerned. I'm looking to see where the MAPs come in specifically within the power sector.
Well, we're all tied together. I mean, it's a value chain. We happen to be at the end, but ours is the go-between between the distribution companies, the bad boys as you call it, and the customer itself, because the customer doesn't want to pay a metered estimate on what they're getting. They want to know exactly what they're paying for and that they're getting what they pay for. That's where the metering asset provider comes in. That's the link between all of these. Nothing can be paid for, nothing can be executed without the money coming in. The money can't come in unless the customer is paying for exactly what he gets.
So for you, what would you say are the key challenges, the causative elements of the metering gap within Nigeria's power space?
Well, I think over the years, you have to look back that this is not something that just happened in the last 5 or 6 years. The majority of meters, Port Harcourt Distribution Company itself, when we took over that facility and bought that facility, we were told there's about 400,000 metered providers and customers. We've come to find out there's 1.5. So that's a huge gap between what was metered and what was not metered. So you essentially have, 1.4 million people that weren't metered and that had estimated billing at best.
That information was very key to your service delivery as far as Nigeria's power sector was concerned. So who dropped the ball?
Well, I'm not sure there was a ball that was actually dropped. What happened was when we came in, we were given a certain amount of time to go through and do your enumeration of the utility to see how many customers there were and identify those customers. But we weren't given that full opportunity to do that. In fact, we were told, make your bid, step back, and the government would decide. So in the last 6-year period of time, we've had to actually go out and identify those customers, what type of classification of those customers, and what is the appropriate tariff for those customers. So it's been a long learning experience, I think, for both sides. And unfortunately, the customer has suffered because of that. Because even now, we can't, as the largest distribution company, we can't get the power where the customer needs it and where they can benefit and pay for it because of the transmission problem. The transmission problem over the last 2 weeks, the voltage has been so high we can't get the power into certain areas into Port Harcourt. We serve 4 different states, so because Port Harcourt is at core, the rest of those 3 states can't get the power where they need them as well.
So much of the arguments against the power sector investors in Nigeria's power business has been the fact that how do you go ahead to bid for and acquire a business without being allowed to do your due diligence as much as you would love to, and then come back to say you want to pull out of the business?
Well, first let me say that we've never said we wanted to step away from the business. You see that we're all Nigerians. The investors in these projects are Nigerians. They're the banks, they're the private investors that made a conscious effort because they wanted to improve life in Nigeria. We invested even though we feel like we didn't have adequate time and resources to do that, or given those adequate resources, we thought that we did the best we could, and that's what we were told was take what you've got, make your bid, and then do the best you can.
So I'm aiming for specifics here in terms of where the meter asset providers in Nigeria come in. Help me understand what the process is like now.
Yes. What you have to do is you have to go down to where the meter asset provider, but what we have to do is we coordinate those efforts. When a customer wants a meter, they have to have a meter so that they can pay what they get for and get what they pay for. So they go to the utility, they register as a customer, They pay their deposit to get connected. And then we connect with the customer pays us, and we know that NERC has given the customer 10 years to pay for that meter. So we have to provide that financing, we provide the installation of that, we provide the accessories to do that, and then we have a 10-year period to which time to recover that. So it's a partnership between the distribution areas and the MAP provider.
Is Nigeria's power sector short of prepaid meters?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, just 2 years ago, we built the largest factory, as I'd mentioned before, in Africa. And it's the state-of-the-art. We're working to upgrade it even as we speak, and it's only 2 years old. But we have a capacity of 3 million meters per year. The problem is we can't get that number of meters out to the customers quickly enough.
Now, that's you coming from the perspective of what Armese Solutions is doing on its own. Now, on a wider scale, how can Nigeria solve its problem of meter shortage?
I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to go out and get the customers to be willing to come in and pay for those meters. You know, a couple of things have happened over the last 6 months or so from NERC, from the federal government. There's the VAT. The VAT increased on the very meters that we're providing, so the cost went up by 2.5%. As you know already in Nigeria, it's somewhat of a tough time right now. A customer that has maybe 1,500, 1,000 Naira per month meter bill, and now they're expected to pay almost 30,000 Naira for a meter and have it installed. If they're only paying 1.5 Naira per 1,500 Naira per month, how can they afford a 30,000 Naira meter? So it's the coordination to work. How are we going to pay for that? How are we going to provide those meters? How can the customer pay for those meters? It's a difficult time right now.
Where do you stand on the conversation on cost-reflective tariff in Nigeria?
The tariff has never been adequate. For whatever reason, the government and NERC hadn't decided that it was adequate. You know, for a cost-reflective tariff, it must at least cover your cost. It's never covered our cost, ever, from the generation or distribution side. We're collecting about 64% of the adequate tariff that we should be. Now, I know that customers don't like paying more. Nobody does. However, you must be able to at least meet your cost to provide that service, a sustainable energy source.
I'm aiming for clarifications here on some sort of specific type of meters to be going out of use, or they are being phased out.
Well, there's a mechanical type of meter that it's older than I am. And what they do is it's not a prepaid meter. It's not a meter that's tied in communication-wise so that you can see it's non-tamper-proof. It can't be bypassed. Those are the things we're looking to come into, to replace those mechanical type meters with the actual state-of-the-art meters, which is what we provide in all of our areas: Kano, Echo, Acacia Distribution, PHED, even outside of here in Nigeria, Liberia, we provide meters. But it's state-of-the-art. It's prepaid meters, it's smart meters, single-phase, three-phase, and even bulk meters for residential and large communities.
So when I heard that conversation yesterday, I found myself thinking, we're short of meters, we're trying to get meters across to as many people as possible, and then here we are again talking about phasing out some meters where they are not even enough.
Well, that is a problem, but what you have to understand is even those mechanical type meters, they aren't accurate at all. The second thing is they could be bypassed by the customer or whoever's doing that type of work, and they break down so much, 80% of the time they're not available. So either the customer's not getting the power that he's hoping for, or he's not getting any power at all, or the utility is not getting paid for that power. So we're trying to phase that out. The government's trying to make sure that we get state-of-the-art, so that going forward we can plan specifically on these kind of issues.
So we're talking about how much Nigerians pay for power and how much you incur as loss on each unit of power that you generate and give to Nigerians.
When we took over at the distribution level, the collection rate was between 28 and 32%, meaning that out of every Naira of electricity that was provided or sold, we only collected between 28 and 32% of that. Even now, after 6 years, we're closer to 62 to 64%, but that's still a big gap between those that are paying and those that are not, which puts more of a burden on those customers that are paying versus those. So when you talk about a cost-reflective tariff, it has to be viewed across the board. Everybody has to pay. You can't go to a gas station and get fuel without paying for the fuel. You can't go to the grocery store and get groceries without paying for those groceries before you leave. The same on power. It's not a free commodity. It's not free to generate. It's not free to transmit. It's not free to distribute those areas. There's an O&M component that costs you. That's the most expensive part. I mean, these systems are over 60 years old. nothing is new about them other than what we've invested over the last 5 and 6 years. So a cost-reflective tariff is imperative just to maintain even what we have without moving forward for the implementation of the improvements. Now, having said that, when you look across West Africa, Nigeria has the lowest power rate per kilowatt hour of the 7 or 8 nations that are adjacent to Nigeria. Even as far away as Liberia, I mean, their cost of power is 3 times what it is here. So people in Nigeria should look at that. The government certainly is looking at that, and we as generation companies, distribution companies, EPC companies at IEL are saying that we have to look across the board to improve where we can within a cost-reflective tariff that's accurate and true.
So I want to know how much is gained or how much is lost per unit of power that is given to Nigerians.
As it is current, even at PHED, about 32% of every kilowatt hour that is sold is collected upon. That means we lose that much. Every single kilowatt hour that's produced, 32% of that cost is gone because you can't recover that. Again, when you have a kilowatt hour that's sent out, only 32% of that is actually paid for because of transmission loss, distribution system losses, and customers just not paying. Whether it's commercial, residential, or industrial, only 32% of that power is not being paid for, it's just being wasted.
That was Dallas Peavey, Group Chief Operating Officer for Armese Power Solutions.